Hello, everybody. This is Brett Davis with IQ Podcast, of course, with the Brett Davis Podcast coming to you from beautiful Coronado. I'm very honored to have the author of the Empire Builder, John Sprickles, and the Making of San Diego, Sandra Bonner, Bonura. And of course, I fudged that and I already got an F. So the podcast is over and everybody have a good day.
D- only. You're good.
Well, Miss Bonura, tell me something. Where did the idea come on doing a book on John Sprickles?
Okay, that's a very complicated question.
Really?
Where did the idea come? Well, here's a fun little story how I got to John D. Sprickles. I think it was around 2008. The archivist at Scripps Institution of Oceanography said to me, "Hey, we just got donated 5 steamship trunks that haven't been opened in 100 years. And 4 of the trunks had all the kind of oceanography stuff that they expected as they were cataloging. But one trunk was full of old rare Hawaiiana. I mean, botany collections from Hawaii, postcards, letters, 3 years of letters, photographs, albums, newspapers, so rare, never seen, from 1890 to 1894. And let me just get to the thing. When I read the love letters from a missionary teacher in Hawaii during the revolution in Hawaii, which is not really a revolution, it was a coup d'etat, I thought, this is a book. This has got to be a book. So anyways, the archivist, Deborah Day, transcribed it. I edited the letters. I researched all the context, pitched it. That book was published, and in it, she talked about Sprickles in these letters home about as the revolution was just about to take place in Hawaii. And so from that book came another big book, a real important book for me, called Light in the Queen's Garden, Ida Mae Pope, Pioneer for Hawaii's Daughters. I
saw that book before we knew each other. I saw it at the Palace.
That's an important book for those who want to know primary source in a very, colorful way. How in the world America got a hold of the Hawaiian Islands, how we overthrew their monarchy. And it's all their primary source material. Anyways, she talked about in her correspondence, John Sprickles, the sugar. And I'm going, wait a minute, I'm a native San Diegan. I was born and raised in San Diego. I know this name Sprickles. And if I'm getting things right from both those books and then these 2 other little books I wrote, all this sugar money came from Hawaii, built my city. And I'm like, what? So anyway, then I became somewhat of a little expert on Sprickles in San Diego. I began to research more in Hawaii, came back and researched across the United States on this, looking for things. I realized nobody else has done this book. And this man was amazing. I mean, his footprints, his fingerprints, everywhere in our city, and nobody knows him. I'm like, oh, gee, I got to write another book.
I've been following him since I was in high school many, many years ago, just because his name would come up in different areas of San Diego, as you know. So let me go back a little bit. So there was a trunk that had all this history in it, and then the research started from that. Yeah. Where were these trunks kept? They forgot about them?
They were in an attic of a little house in Berkeley, California, and this house was built by Julia Morgan. A lot of historians know that name, Julia Morgan, because she's like America's first noted female architect. I mean, her houses are, really, this house sold in 22 seconds in a bidding war online, and it had never been touched for a century. Because the woman, Carrie Winter, who wrote these letters and talked about the sugar mills, and the shipping and going back and forth on Sprickles ships, she didn't have children, so nothing was disturbed. Those letters were found in their original envelopes. 2, Charles, and his response, he was 3 years in Harvard getting his PhD, and she was 1 block from Iolani Palace watching everything unfolding as she taught the Queen's girls. So yeah, that trunk gave me a lot of material, and I never would have imagined, and it came at a time when I really needed, when that when that first book came, my mother was dying and I needed a distraction. My brother had just died and my mother just died, and I thought, I can't cope. I'm going to read letters. And so they healed me. And once I began writing and realized, hey, I got published, I may not be so bad.
How long did it take you? I mean, what a phenomenal way for anybody listening that possibly are going through grief or some type of challenge in their life to channel that negative energy into something that's positive. And in your case, The Empire Builder was really, that's when you wrote the book, right? During that time?
No.
That was the book.
Wrote the first book, and I didn't know how to get published, but the merit was seen quickly in Hawaii with the University of Hawaii Press, which is pretty distinctive. And so they published that one. I went on to another one, 3 major books and 2 smaller ones. But I never stopped. Once I looked at it as healing, from that first book, it's like, I said, I love this. I love writing. I love telling stories. I love meeting people and hearing their stories. And I love writing stories. I'm just a natural storyteller, like my grandmother was actually. She loved to tell me stories after a few shots of schnapps in the evening. And I think I'm just my Nana's girl.
What's the difference between your very first book that you wrote and Empire Builder? What are the differences as far as the way that the book was put together?
Well, the first book is an epistolary. It's a series of letters that are just edited. I edited them carefully to tell the story. John D. Sprickles had no such collection. His book is my intensive research. Now, because this man was private and actually phobically shy, I had to travel far and wide, find descendants, look through their archives, look through newspapers away from California, because the Sprickles family owned the newspapers in Hawaii, San Francisco, and San Diego.
Well, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
They control the narrative. Nobody's going to trash talk the Sprickles unless, because they own the major newspapers. So
he was the first William Randolph Hearst. Before Hearst was Hearst. He was the guy that, everybody talks about Hearst, but Sprickles really was, the family was really they kind of covered,
Fun fact, John Sprickles owned the San Francisco Call that William Hearst ended up buying later.
See?
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. So we know of the San Diego history, but we didn't know about the Hawaii connection.
Oh, it's huge.
The San Francisco connection, of course, we know that there was a big earthquake. He ended up coming to San Diego. I guess he was in his ship off the coast. He ended up in San Diego somehow.
No. He owned by the age of 26, John Sprickles owned a major shipping company called Oceanic Shipping Company. And there's a whole cult following for that industry that he began. And so he owned these luxury liners, the first luxury liners that went to the Pacific. He was so good that the United States gave him a contract to deliver the U.S. mail to Tahiti, Australia, New Zealand. This was John. At 26, he started this company because he didn't like sugar. The family were like billionaires by our standards today in shipping, owning the sugar cane, refining the sugar cane. John said, I'm going to ship the sugar cane. Then we got a virtual monopoly in the Pacific. That's what that guy did. He loved ships. So real quick, when we overthrew the Queen, Liliuokalani in Hawaii, she was gone. Well, the Sprickles family, who were loyal to the royals, they were kicked out, and there was death threats to the Sprickles family. So they left their holdings, being supervised went to San Francisco and made their mark. 1906 earthquake happens. You've got John D. sicker than a dog, in fact, near death. And he was, gosh, how old was he then? 38, 45, I don't remember. No, he was in his 40s. Anyways, earthquake happens. He was carried to one of his ships to come down to San Diego because he owned a hotel called the Hotel del Coronado. So he had a place to be a refugee at, and he owned a whole island. That was Coronado, and he owned all Broadway. So he was lucky he had a place to go. When he got here, He was carried, that's how ill he was, off the ship to the hotel, and he healed like that. And they said, well, we're not going back to San Francisco. He says, I'm staying here. This climate appeals to me. And anyway, that's what he did. If that earthquake it was San Francisco's destiny, but in my opinion, it was San Diego's destiny, because our city would have looked very different had he not come and loved this place so much.
So interesting how fate plays a hand in everything. So he already had things happening in San Diego when he got here. The things he didn't create them by accident. He wasn't off the coast saying, "Oh, that looks like a nice place. I guess I'll go to work there." He was literally sick and carried off a ship, and he already owned the Hotel Del at that time.
Yes, because the earthquake was in 1906. He came here in 1888 when everybody was fleeing San Diego, the financial bust. So the Hotel Del was going to be torn up for firewood. There was no money to finish it, nothing. And he came and saved the day. The train was pulling out of San Diego in 1888 because there was no coal. So he says, okay, I'll build a coal wharf. While he's living in San Francisco, he's building a coal wharf. He's developing Coronado. He finished building the Hotel Del, and he began buying lots and creating an infrastructure here. Because San Diego, we were thirsty. We had no water. We had muddy brown stuff. That's what we were drinking here in San Diego. Brown stuff from the San Diego River was never, until he came, he built 3 dams. 3 dams. His water became his dams became San Diego's municipal water supply at some point. So this is a guy who built our infrastructure and our superstructure. And where's his statue? I keep looking around for a statue. All gone. That's why this book had to be told. And I insisted that it had San Diego in the title, because it's more about, it's more than just making of San Diego, which he loved. It's really, it's an interesting story, but I wrote it for San Diegans because I'm old enough to remember, Sprickles. And you remember too, Brett, but the young people, they're like, isn't there a Sprickles Organ and Pavilion in Babel Park? Oh yeah, Sprickles Theater. That's it. That's all people know.
So the Alonzo Horton gets a lot of credit for being the founder of San Diego, but the reality is the money was from Sprickles.
Well, Father Horton is older than John D. Sprickles, right? He's like his father, John D.'s father's age. Father Horton came down here, by the way, from San Francisco as well. Earlier, and remember, everyone was living in Old Town. He moved everyone down to the Gas Lamp District, today's Gas Lamp, and they called it Newtown. And people, just shacks. 5th Avenue was just a bunch of wooden structures. Wyatt Earp lived down there, had prostitute houses and saloons. It ran down. But by the time John D. came down here, thought the bust was happening. Remember the financial bust? Father Horton had nothing anymore. He was the father of San Diego because he sort of developed it and moved it. But they called him in his era, John D., the stepfather of San Diego, because they didn't want to dishonor Father Horton.
Sure. Okay. So it was a respect thing.
Yes, they both respected each other mightily.
It's very interesting. It's so nice hearing the history of San Diego. And the thing is, there's things that we know and we heard being San Diegans. And during this research that you did, you probably were surprised at every corner that you went.
Oh, gosh. I kept saying, oh, this is a book in itself. Stop, don't look. Go, don't look. Because yes, I unearthed so many things. And when you're reading old newspapers, from, very, very old stories, you're like, wow, how did we forget that? Yeah, and I love San Diego, just like John D. did. So yeah, the research was rich. It fed my soul. It's still feeding my soul. I'm sad. The book is finished. I miss it.
You know what? I'm glad that you did the book. And I think it's something that our schools need to embrace because it is a huge part of San Diego. And San Diego has a lot of facets. We can't even talk about just that. We could even look at the whole Native American culture in itself is a story. There's a lot that's there. But this book that you wrote, is fabulous. I can tell you that we practically walk by the Dell every night.
Oh,
Every night we walk by it, because it's in our neighborhood. We're very passionate about Coronado. We love the citizens. We love the history of being here. There's no other place like it. We visit other places around the country, and there's a lot of beautiful places. But there's just something about the Dell and Sprickles. Whenever I see the Hotel Dell, I just smile, and I'm like, we're so lucky to have this.
oh.
This treasure.
Yes, and the fact that it has survived 130 years being a wooden structure, why didn't that burn down? I mean, it's a treasure. It's an absolute treasure. I love it so much. I love the crooked halls. I love the creaking planks. I was a docent for I used to volunteer my services giving tours the Hotel Dell to tourists.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for a short time. And this was before my book.
How interesting.
Yeah, it was cool walking them around and having them envision the Victorian era there, and the tours like, oh wow, it's such a joy to be in that hotel.
So let's do a little bit of a detour east of the Hotel Dell. I think it's east. They have the Glorietta Bay Inn, which used to be one of John's. Was it one of his homes?
It was his home. It was the home. You may be thinking about the other beachfront house where the hanging was from Rebecca.
That was the son's house, right?
That was the son's, Klaus.
So let's talk a little bit about the Glorietta Bay, because pretty much he had the hotel first, and he later built the home, right?
Remember when the earthquake happened? He was carried down to the Hotel Dell, and when he decided, I'm not going back to San Francisco, I'm going to stay here, he built the Glorietta Bay mansion on that bluff to be his home. He parked his yacht in front of it at the Glorietta Bay. Right there, you could see his yacht. And then he built a tunnel that went from the Glorietta Bay to the hotel. And that's where he went. Walking through, he had his barber over there. He had the Hotel Dell's doctor, was his handpicked doctor. He put all his guests there. And during Prohibition, that tunnel served a really nice purpose, right?
Well, I'm sure it did.
Yeah.
Is that tunnel? The tunnel still has to be there somewhat, I would think.
Well, the hotel's going through all their construction, all their demolition, right, for the big overhaul right now. And I talked to some construction work, some of the guys, and I said, hey, have you found the tunnels? He said, oh, yeah. Yeah, so it's
still there.
Yes, if you go into the music room that John added later in his
we've been in the music room.
In the music room, the tall doors are all. One of them used to go under, and those
You're talking about the gold doors.
Yes, he used to have his personal organ because he played the organ as well in that room.
I heard that. So one of those gold doors in the music room was an entrance into one of the tunnels.
Well, that's what I understand. You go.
Interesting.
There's a tunnel still at the Hotel Dell that I was given a tour of several years ago because I was a docent, and it's magnificent. That's why when you walk around the Hotel Dell today, you don't see the housekeeping carts or the room service. They all use this tunnel, and you can see there's this big thing under this 1886, this big mechanical thing. It's really cool. It's very cool.
So you have not done a book signing at the Hotel Dell, have you?
Pandemic. No book signing for Sandee.
So if we were able to put one together for you, would you do it?
Oh, let's see. Yes.
I'll see what I can do. We'll talk about it.
Please.
I'll put a couple good words in for you.
Yeah, that's good. Now, I would think that the hotel would want, right? They'd want to have this in their bookstore, but I think they don't realize this is the most current history on the hotel. I mentioned it's to 2020. I was able at the last moment get the whole history down to that Dell, but they don't. It's pretty corporate now. They're doing some good things at the hotel, though.
Well, I have my debates. I'm old school. I kind of like it the way it was. I don't like all the modern wallpaper. I don't like the way the bar area was done and the area was kind of closed off. And not open like it was at one time. But that's me.
Yeah,
Just,
you and I remember how it used to be with the cigar smoking lounges and
oh,
how it used to be. But here's what they're doing good. They're restoring the accurate. They're restoring the. There used to be two entrances into the Hotel Del. The one to the men's and the ladies, that's coming back. The big porch is coming back. They're restoring the entrance how it used to be. You know, kudos to, you know, not making it look like, you know, some random, you know, I really like some of the things they're doing. I just hate that when you hear that weird music that's not specific, you know, it's weird.
I like authenticity,
Me
and
too.
I think that there's a way to do all that and keep that in place. I mean, of course, it's not. I'm not the architect, but I'll tell you, there is no other hotel like it. I love hotels. I even love the Glorietta Bay Hotel, and I think it's a beautiful place. I think there's things that they should leave in place, and you know, can you imagine getting rid of that beautiful elevator that's in that in John's old mansion? I mean, can you imagine if they took something away like that, or
Can't imagine. And did you know I have a picture in my book of Mr. Sprickles on a swing with his grandchildren on his lap? And when you at the front desk of the Glorietta, look to your left, and the hooks are still in the ceiling today from that exact swing. I love that they keep those there.
I think those things make a difference in their character
Yes.
issues that are something that need to be in place still. And I agree with you. Has the general manager of the Hotel Del seen the book yet?
Not to my knowledge. In fact, I gave him ample. I went to every industry that John owned. He owned the railway system, all of San Diego's. I got a quote. What's the update? Because my last chapter is breaking up the empire. Got a quote from them. His organ is back east. I got a quote from them in the book. What happened to his organ? The Impossible Railroad. You know, that big railroad out in Campo. The museum is all.
We've been on it. I've been on it.
Oh, that's John Dee's whole thing. I've got them in the book. So I contacted the Hotel Del, the manager, and said, would you like to have a quote in the book as to, you know, what the status is right now? And no, nothing back yet. So I think the pandemic pretty much got them very busy. So they never got back to me.
Well, let's see what we can do, because I believe in you. I believe in what you've done, and I can't promise anything, but you know, let's see if we can get the book more notoriety, because it's a fabulous book, and I think you've done a phenomenal job. I don't get too in awe. I mean, I love books. I have thousands of books, by the way,
Wow.
and I love what you've done, and I think it's important that we get more of that history out there, and it's just for the right reasons. And I think John, to this day, has been forgotten a lot about, and I'm glad you did this book. And it also highlights San Diego, not just Coronado, in a positive way. And it puts things in perspective where there's a lot of things that people weren't aware of. You've done the research, and now you have the facts. And this Empire Builder is a phenomenal book. You've done a great job on it.
I thank you so much. So we, you know, authors can't live without people like you, Brett. So we appreciate you giving voice to what we do. I mean, we're not movie stars. We're just solo little writers and researchers. And I thank you for making the public aware of books. You know, people who are historians like me, we don't sell books that are going to, you know, like we're not John Grisham. We never expect to make a lot of money or have the notoriety. But we tell a story because we think it's important. And for me, this was important for San Diegans to read their history right from the beginning to today. And it's very spicy. And I don't sanitize history. So there's things I'm like, oh dear, you did that. But you know what? I think it has merit in our city. I'm not doing that to toot my horn. I worked hard on it, and it's an important story to be told.
Did you happen to see any like clothing or jewelry or anything that John once owned? Anything, hats?
Yes, lots of stuff. There's a lot of flasks. You know those little flasks
Really?
with initials on it. Yes. The mother lode of the archives are in Napa at his great granddaughter's ranch. It's a vineyard. It's beautiful. Oh my God.
Sprickles Vineyard.
Pardon me?
It's called the Sprickles Vineyard.
No, it's not called the Sprickles. His descendants. John Dee had 4 children. I was very, very fortunate to find 1, 2, 3, 4, all lines that helped me see him in a whole picture. And he had a son who died in 1921 and horrifically in a terrible car accident, and that's why his legacy didn't survive. Klaus, the youngest one, ooh, party boy, womanizer. That's our Coronado boy. He spent all the money, and then the 2 daughters. So through the 2 daughters of John Dee, there's quite a collection I found. I've been given gifts that I didn't want. I was given a rare. Do you know what a calabash is?
I've heard that. Isn't that what is that?
It's a huge, made out of coal wood. It belonged to the Hawaiian monarchy, and they took the poi out of it with the 3 fingers. It's rare. He gave it to me. He's older man, and he said, I just use this as my recycling bin. It belonged to King Kalakaua. I'm like, put it in a museum. No.
Unbelievable.
I want you to have it. I'm like, what? First of all, I have no room for it, but I'm figuring out what to do with it. The descendants have been amazing because they're well aware of their history, but there's been nothing on the Sprickles family. And
I think the Dell should have the Dell or the Glorietta Bay Inn. There should be a John Sprickles museum.
Absolutely, a permanent one. I did a museum exhibit for the Coronado Historical Association a few years back on a John. It was very popular, and they ripped it down. And I'm like, people were saying to me then, this should stay up. This should stay up. He built Coronado. He paid for just about everything.
Why do you think they took it down?
Well, because it's a small museum. They want to keep getting space, but But I mean, there's a wall. Can we have a wall for John Dee?
I think either place would be fitting. I mean, his home where he lived, or the Hotel Dell. I mean, those 2 places come to mind. I think it only makes sense, right?
Absolutely. For me, it does, and for you, because we love our history, we honor it, and we want to honor the pioneers. I mean, he is the pioneer building San Diego. He did everything. And there's nothing.
You're absolutely right. I mean, there's things you shared today with us on our show that I had no idea about, and I thought I knew a lot, and you took it to way different levels than I ever even imagined. I didn't realize how they were so connected to Hawaii, and I didn't realize, how he had business. He had newspapers in San Francisco, Hawaii, San Diego, and probably other areas we didn't even talk about. I mean, I didn't realize that the reach was that, and I didn't know about the luxury cruise liners.
Wow. Oh, they
were a lot today. I had no idea about that. Thank you so much for being on the show, and I'm just honored that you took the time out of your schedule, and I love what you're doing, and I love to help get this word out about the book more, of course, and see how we can get this into more schools, and also how John won't be forgotten, and get more information out about him, and try to find a way to get his information out to the Dell or to the Glorietta Bay, and to see if there's something that they can do there should be something for him.
I'm with you. I'm not arguing with that. And the book just came out, so maybe something will happen. I always think there's a reason I write books, and it will be clear soon. And by the way, the book, without any marketing, is already right away. It sold 1,500 copies almost immediately.
Fantastic.
That is pretty good. So we'll see. We want the right people to read them and to show them. So thank you, Brett, for helping me. I hope.
It's really, I don't think things happen by accident. Like I said, the book called out to me 2 days before a photo shoot.
That's so cool.
At John's house, and I wasn't even thinking about it. And I looked up and I saw this book, and I saw the Hotel Dell, and I right away was pulled in. And I'm like, what a coincidence! And my oldest daughter was with me, and I'm like, So I never even went there looking for that book. I was just spending time with my daughter that day. And then we had our photo shoot on Monday, and I'm like, this is just too weird. And then I told Claudia, of course, who runs the Glorietta Bay Inn, about it, and she laughed. And next thing I know, you and I are talking. It's bizarre.
I know. I love how these things happen. You're a networker. You know, this is what you do, and it's nice when I get to be the recipient of that. You know, I really do. And I think we should have a little wine and the Glorietta Bay Inn just put a little wine bar for happy hours. I think we should have a little party there.
I think you just want to party. You've got schnapps. The next thing I know, we're having bratwurst, and then we're having schnitzel, and then what's the dessert?
Torta.
No, that's torta's not German. What's the German pastry? The real popular one. Streusel. Strudel. Strudel.
My grandmother used to talk about John Sprickles. She'd say Sprickles. She was a German immigrant. Sprickles.
John Sprickles.
Yeah.
I appreciate you being on. And what's a good website? Do you have a website for this at all?
I do. I have a website. It's an author's website. All my books are on there. SandraBonura.com. SandraBonura.com.
So you couldn't have kept the name Sandee. See, if you're a Filipino, it would be Sandee Davis Bonura.
That's right. That's my.
Got to have 3 or 4 names before you get to the end name. So it would have been Sandee Davis.
Brett, I want you to enjoy your last name, because I named for 26 years before I got married. I miss my maiden name of Davis. Let me tell you, I never had to spell it, never had to pronounce it, never had it butchered. Embrace and love that name today.
Sandee Bonura.
Bonura. You know what? That's why you need your wife, Sarah.
Is that the reason? I thought there was other things that were involved with that, but thank you. I appreciate that. I look forward to having you come down to be in Coronado again, and us grabbing a bite to eat and talking history and books and learning from each other. And I think you're fabulous.
Well, I think you're pretty fabulous. Raise your hand if you think we're fabulous. There's 2 of us. We're fabulous.
You know, we may be related, which would be even weirder than this whole story. How we
we are.
Wouldn't that be weird if we have like an uncle from Iowa?
Oh, you know what? I'm already feeling it. Davis is no accident. Somebody had some shenanigans, and we are related. I am convinced.
I'm really curious. Now you've got me to really think about looking at my family roots.
Yeah.
And so I thank you for being on, and I don't believe in a coincidence. And again, Empire Builder.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it. Can everybody see that, or has it got a weird look to it?
Let's see if you can see mine. No, it does not want to be seen.
It's really strange, because when
you can see hers.
You can see hers. Fabulous book. I highly recommend it for anybody that wants to hear a fabulous story, even if you're not from San Diego. Pick it up. It's a great read.
Yes,
and I highly recommend going to the Glorietta Bay Inn and staying. It's a wonderful place. It's a great hotel. I stayed in John's room. It was wonderful. My wife and I had a nice time. And also the Hotel Del, which is world famous. The 2 beautiful places that were connected. 2 of the things that people know John for, but don't know everything about him. So thank you for all this information, and I highly recommend your book.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Be safe.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Of course, thank you to my sponsors, Indian Motorcycle, which is a great motorcycle, beautiful bike. Indian Motorcycle of San Diego. Attorney King, thank you so much for being a great partner in the show. The Gym, George Jackson, who's just opened a brand new facility over in Mesa, Arizona, and in Chula Vista. And last but not least, IB Fitness. Thank you for everything you do, Marina. She's the Moga Mommy and does a wonderful podcast with us. Very raw talk, but really honest talk. Everybody take care and behave.